Has anybody been watching the Lindsay Clancy trial?
The coverage of the Lindsay Clancy case is very alarming.
We may now have proof that Lindsay Clancy did not take the life of her kids.
To be clear, Lindsay Clancy admits that she her children.
Lindsay Clancy is 100% guilty and should be criminally charged.
The moment I saw that mother-in-law take that stand and say nothing but great things about that woman, I knew something was up.
There is no way for her to have strangled her youngest son and for her body to have been 82 degrees. It is impossible.
No way. They're having a support rally for Lindsay, the woman who took the life of her 3 kids, not saying she's innocent. They're saying they understand why she did it, that postpartum was the cause and that she deserves more help.
We love you, Lindsay, and we're here for you. We're here to show support and love for her.
But y'all got Lindsay messed up. These are the facts that are me. The fact that they were never investigating Patrick.
Massive numbers of people on the internet are theorizing that actually the husband was the one who killed the children.
She's guilty. 100% guilty. And you know what? Nobody that takes the life of another is mentally sound.
Lindsay Clancy.
Lindsay Clancy.
Lindsay Clancy.
Lindsay Clancy.
In January 2023, a quiet suburban home in Dexbury, Massachusetts became the scene of an unimaginable tragedy. Lindsay Clancy, a 32-year-old labor and delivery nurse and mother of 3, committed an act that shocked the entire nation. Lindsay unalived her 3 young children, 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and 8-month-old Cullen, before attempting to commit the unthinkable. People are still debating what happened even though she admitted to it. What makes this case so intensely confusing is why it happened, and how 2 sides can look at the exact same family timeline and see 2 entirely different realities. This case has evolved far beyond a criminal trial. It has ignited a fierce national debate over law, accountability, and the terrifying reality of maternal mental health.
She's guilty. 100% guilty. And you know what? Nobody that takes the life of another is mentally sound. Let's just be honest. Nobody that would do that under any circumstances, unless it's 100% self-defense, is mentally sound. The fact that she took the life of all 3 of her babies, which took about 3 to 5 minutes each, and the fact that she had them face down so she didn't have to look at them, and used exercise bands while she did it. They were probably fighting for their life and crying, and she still did it. And then she did superficial cuts on her neck and wrist and then jumped out of a window. No. Even if she was not 100% mentally sound, nobody that takes the life or does what she did is. So, you know what? She's guilty. 100% guilty. She should be charged to the full extent. I also feel like her husband should also be charged. So I think that he is also guilty of, if nothing else, neglect, because he apparently knew that she had threatened to take the life of her children or harm them in some way, shape, or form. So the errands that he needed to run were not necessary, and they both should be criminally charged, and I 100% think that she is guilty. Was she over medicated? Maybe. But she also asked for her attorney several times in the hospital and did not one time ask about her babies or how they were or showed any kind of remorse whatsoever. So, you know what? I feel nothing for her. Nothing at all. I feel like she deserves to rot in jail.
On the day of the tragedy, her husband, Patrick, testified that Lindsay was having one of her best days. She was smiling, normal, and building snowmen outside with the kids. Hours later, she sent Patrick on an errand to pick up medicine and take out foods. To the prosecution, this is an open and shut case of a calculated murderer, intentionally creating a 25-minute window to commit the crime uninterrupted. But to the defense, that exact same timeline proves something else entirely: the terrifying, volatile nature of postpartum psychosis. They argue it acts like a light switch, allowing a mother to look completely high-functioning just moments before a catastrophic psychological break.
We may now have proof that Lindsay Clancy did not take the life of her kids, because there is no way for her to have strangled her youngest son and for her body to have been 82 degrees. It is impossible. Here's why. So during the trial, Patrick said he left his house at 5:15, but we know he sent his work email at 5:24 through something he called Surface Pro. Surface Pro is a 2-in-1 hybrid computer, kind of like a tablet that transforms into a laptop. This is important. Reddington then later asks him, "You sent the email from where?" And he says, "My laptop," but then later hesitates and says, "Maybe it was from my phone." But we know it was sent from his laptop, and his laptop was pinged at his home at that time, putting Patrick at his home at 5:24 p.m. And the drive from his home to CVS is 3 to 4 minutes, and we saw him walk through the doors of CVS at 5:32 p.m., meaning he left his home earliest at 5:25 and latest at 5:29. At 5:33, he calls Lindsay saying they're out of stock of the Pedialex and he's going to get the generic brand, which we know is a lie because after looking at the evidence photos, you can see through the bag that he actually got the Pedialex. And a minute later at 5:34 is when Lindsay calls him back, putting her at the top floor of the house at that time, and we don't know where she went after that, giving her about 5 to 10 minutes max from when Patrick left until that phone call. And the toxicology report said that at this time, she had 2 times the recommended levels of Seroquel in her system, which would cause heavy sedation and make it hard for anyone to even move. And a minute later at 5:35 would have been the earliest time that Lindsay could have jumped. Patrick then left the restaurant at 5:55, and it's a 10 to 12 minute drive from the restaurant to his house, meaning he could have got there anytime between 6:05 to 6:07. Patrick then calls 911 at 6:11 after claiming to have trouble calling them, which is not possible with 911. He also said he heard Lindsay talking when everyone else said she was nonverbal at this point, but that's a different story. First responders then arrived at 6:15, and their youngest son Callan, the 8-month-old, got to the ER sometime between 6:30 and 6:40. And 10 minutes after Callan arrived, they were able to revive his heartbeat. Callan was 8 months old, and the longest an infant at his age can go without a heartbeat is 20 to 30 minutes. That's very rare, and in special cases, 45 minutes. So if they were able to revive his heartbeat at 6:40, 30 minutes before that would be 6:10, but Patrick would have been home at that time and seen what was happening. So let's just say it happened 45 minutes before at 5:55 when Patrick wasn't home. The only problem is that would only give Lindsay 12 minutes to do that to her kids, run upstairs, jump out the window, and for her body to get to 82 degrees, which is impossible. Because the minimum amount of time it would take a woman her age to get to that temperature is 45 minutes to 4 hours, and that is severe conditions. One claim is that she jumped right after getting off the phone with Patrick, but that wouldn't make sense either because she would have had to have done that to her kids before 5:35, making it impossible for them to bring Callan's heartbeat back. So at the minimum, it would have been impossible for her to have done that to Callan, her body to have gotten to 82 degrees, and then for them to have revived Callan's heartbeat. Just impossible.
Then there is the medical confusion. Lindsay Clancy wasn't someone hiding her struggles. She was a labor and delivery nurse who desperately begged for help. In the months leading up to the tragedy, she saw multiple psychiatrists, called a crisis hotline, and even checked into a psychiatric hospital. She was prescribed a staggering 13 different psychiatric medications in just 4 months. Her defense argues that this toxic cocktail of heavy medications over-medicated her and actually triggered severe psychosis. But the prosecution fired back with a chilling counterpoint. Out of all those medical evaluations prior to the incident, not a single doctor ever noted signs of active mania or psychosis. Lindsay complained of severe anxiety and wanting to end things, but she never once reported hearing voices until after the tragedy occurred.
Is this not suspicious? Watch this.
The pill bottles that you had, do you recall, what are the circumstances that you had them in a bag in your car?
The reason I had them in a bag is because sometimes a provider would adjust medications. So for example, I do remember Lindsay had a prescription of Ativan, and then a few days later they wanted to increase the dosage because it wasn't effective. So what they would do is they would say, give that old prescription to your husband, he'll discard it, and then continue taking from the new prescription.
I'm not a medical professional, but prescriber or doctor saying give the medicine that they are no longer using, give it to your husband who is not the person on the prescription. That sounds truly insane. Like, why do you have access to the drugs that are prescribed to Lindsay? What do you guys think? And something else I found freaking crazy is this comment right here. And remember when he said he was giving CPR to Cora, yet the EMT says her body was face down when they got to her. So I think that's crazy. I also think it's crazy that the doctor allegedly told Patrick to hold on to the medicine that Lindsay is no longer using. And third, in this reply video comment, the previous video was the EMT people saying that they found the husband when they went into the basement just sitting on the couch. Which I don't think that's a normal response. To me, at least, if you just lost or you lost 3 kids or on the verge of losing 1 and you've already lost 2 and you don't know how your wife is doing, I just think that reaction is kind of crazy to me.
The coverage of the Lindsay Clancy case is very alarming. Let me first start off by saying postpartum is real. Postpartum is very real. Now, one thing I will say, fellas, the more you help your lady when she's going through postpartum and more present you are, does seem to make the effects a little less. I'm not saying I do a great job at it, but that's something I have noticed. But with that being said, I think one of the more alarming things is women identifying with Lindsay Clancy doing it, if she did do it, because evidently a lot of other women feel the same way sometimes about their kids. I did not realize that was a part of postpartum. I did not realize that. That's crazy. If she did do this, she definitely should be in jail. But one thing I feel like a lot of women identify with her too is because I feel like a lot of women feel a certain type of way at how quick Lindsay Clancy's ex seemed to have moved on. It seemed like he moved on pretty quick, and I think a lot of women have resentment for how easy a man can move on after having kids, whether he's with the woman or not with the woman. It almost seems like having kids doesn't affect them because it didn't change their body and all of that. But with that being said, I am torn on this case. I feel 60-40, 70-30 Lindsay Clancy did it. But I'm not going to lie, I have gotten into the weeds of the conspiracy theories. And I too also kind of believe the gentleman did move on fast. That's a very traumatic situation. So the thought that someone could be married just 3 years later is crazy, and be dated less than a year later, from what I understand. Not saying it doesn't happen, because if it is completely genuine, hey, look, man, my heart's for him. I pray he has happiness. But some other things, though, that kind of bothersome is, now, I don't know if this is real, but they say the cameras didn't work. And Lindsay Clancy's ex-husband seems to be a person who works in IT. Very smart guy. As a person who works closely with IT people, man, IT people know how to do anything. So to hear that their cameras weren't working, that's kind of alarming, because IT people know how to fix cameras. IT people also know how to stage certain things to look a certain way. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, that just be on the outside looking in. And when someone is in a very psychosis state, I know they said she admitted to things, but when someone's in a psychosis state, you can tell them things and they will believe it and they will reiterate those things. I don't know if y'all have ever seen it, but that's how it happens, especially when people are drowsy. And then the last thing that's kind of alarming is the way this lady tried to fix herself, the way Lindsay Clancy tried to go about it. Most women don't do those extremes when they're trying to take themselves out. Now, the overdose part, yes, I see that all the time. That jumping out of a window, that give me a little bit of pause. That gives me a little bit of pause.
The confusion only deepens following a recent explosive testimony from a hospital chaplain who visited Lindsay days after the incident. The chaplain testified that when Lindsay first woke up, she held her hand and said, "I'm so glad my children are safe." How do we interpret that? To some, it is the ultimate proof of delusion that in a fractured mind, she believed she was saving them from an unsafe world, but the state sees a conscious effort to minimize her actions. Furthermore, the chaplain testified that Lindsay claimed a male voice commanded her to do it, warning that if she doesn't obey, neither she nor her children would be safe. The prosecution argues this voice was fabricated after the fact to build an insanity defense, pointing out that she journaled daily about her depression but never wrote a single word about hearing voices before that night.
Rest in peace to those innocent, beautiful babies. I'm so sorry that happened, but y'all got Lindsay messed up. These are the facts that are killing me. The fact that they were never investigating Patrick. With all this, let me just break down the evidence that is literally pointing to this man doing this. 1, Lindsay was a nurse. If she was going to herself, why would she slice her arm horizontally Every medical professional would know how to get that job done properly. Secondly, if she's going to try to herself by injecting a large amount of medication, why would she crush it? Why would she need to crush the medication? Why would she need to do that to herself? The children were found with sailor knots wrapped around them. Sailor knots, that is a very specific, taught, and strategic way of putting something into a knot. Lindsay is a nurse. Why? Like, hello? When they showed the crime scene evidence photos, the CVS bag was underneath the spick and span clean plates of the children. But he said before he went to CVS, the kids were on the couch eating food. If that's the case, how did the plates that don't look touched, freshly clean plates, not a lick of ketchup, not a lick of barbecue sauce on the plates that they were eating, supposedly eating chicken nuggets on, how did they end up on top of the bag that you had just got from CVS? They're also trying to claim that Lindsay was having thoughts of offing herself for months. In fact, they tried to bring up that there were searches on the home computer, on Patrick's computer in August 2022 of different methods of how to do that to yourself. Looking up Tom Hall, all this stuff, right? That was the biggest thing that she was planning, and she had been feeling this way, right? Lindsay wasn't even home when those searches were happening on the home computer. She was at the doctor with the baby that she supposedly did these things. So she was at the doctor. He was at home. Y'all just need to tune in.
This layer of confusion have completely fractured the public. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of mothers routinely gather in silent pink-clad rallies, claiming Lindsay is a victim of a medical system that ignores postpartum emergencies.
We love you, Lindsay, and we're here for you. We're here to show support and love for her.
No way. They're having a support rally for Lindsay, the woman who took the life of her 3 kids, not saying she's innocent. They're saying they understand why she did it, that postpartum was the cause and that she deserves more help.
I have this many women in one place at one time who may understand all of us on a level that others don't. So, on
a level that others don't understand, you're having a rally about how y'all all thought about getting rid of your kids. That's not a... Whoa, where the cops? Where the police at, man?
We love you, Lindsay, and we're here for you. We're here to show support and love for her.
Thank you! Thank you! Thank you!
Mind you, again, they're not out there because they think she's innocent. They're literally saying she only did it because nobody helped her through her postpartum. That her husband should have took her mental illness seriously. So when do the cops come in? Because you have a mass group of women outside a courtroom admitting that they also have ideas of doing things to their kids. And there's no, like, what, bro? There's no way to block, no one can go to jail?
Meanwhile, critics demand strict justice for the children, arguing that a wealthy white professional is receiving an influx of sympathy that low-income or minority mothers are rarely given. Legally, Massachusetts has an incredibly high bar for the not guilty by reason of insanity verdict. The jury doesn't just have to decide if she was mentally ill. They have to decide if she was so detached from reality that she physically could not comprehend that what she was doing was wrong.
The moment I saw that mother-in-law take that stand and say nothing but great things about that woman, I knew something was up. That's all the evidence I needed. That right there was the evidence. Because one thing about it, grandparents don't play by their grandkids. They don't. And she done lost 3 of them. So I can understand her, being on that stand and going off. Oh, she was horrible. Oh, she was, this and that. She had nothing but great things to say about that woman. Something happened. Something happened. And she knows. And that nod, she know her son. She know her son. One thing about it, a mother knows their child. And like I said, this is a very tragic situation. But there is nowhere in the world a grandmother is going to say kind and beautiful things about a person that literally brutally ended their grandchildren's life unless they know something else to be true. We have to sit with that. We have to sit with that and be honest, y'all. Something is something. But that's all I needed. That told me everything.
To be clear, Lindsay Clancy admits that she her children, and so does her attorney. Despite that, massive numbers of people on the internet are theorizing that actually the husband was the one the children, even though we have ample evidence, including surveillance video, that directly refutes that claim. People are still convinced the husband did it, saying the eyes says it all. And on top of all of this, Lindsay Clancy's parents have received nearly $1 million in donations as this murder trial is ongoing. This is what happens when large portions of the internet hate men so much that they literally believe that being around a bear is safer than being around an average man. When an act of evil is committed, they will do all sorts of mental gymnastics to assign the blame somehow to men.
As closing arguments approach, the Lindsay Clancy case remains a harrowing legal and psychological puzzle. As a society, it forces us to ask, where does medical tragedy end and criminal accountability begin? And was this a calculated crime or a catastrophic failure of maternal medicine? That's all for now. My name is Alpha. Let me know your thoughts. Also, watch how Carmelo Anthony's judge destroyed his reputation with one interview. Click the video on the screen.